Members of the jury, we are trying two cases here against two defendants. One of these cases is by this woman, Mrs. Levy. The other is by her husband, and they are each brought against these two defendants, the City of New York and the Blue Taxi Company. You will have to decide these two cases, and you will have to decide them as between the two plaintiffs and the two defendants. You will have to render a verdict in Mrs. Levy's case one way or the other against each of these defendants, and in the same way you will have to decide Mr. Levy's case one way or the other, the case that he brings against each of these defendants. These cases are what we know as negligence cases. They are actions brought to recover damages which these plaintiffs claim were caused to them by the negligence of these defendants. That is to say, by the carelessness of these defendants. That is what negligence means, carelessness. These two plaintiffs say that because of the carelessness of the City of New York in its care of this road, and because of the carelessness of the driver of this taxicab, they have been hurt and injured and damaged, and they say that damage and injury were caused entirely without any carelessness on their part, without any negligence on their part. Now, in an action of the kind where the parties disagree as to the facts, where there is a controversy over the facts in the case, the way the accident happened, the cause of the accident, the surrounding conditions of the accident, where they do not agree, under our law, it is necessary for those facts to be ascertained and determined by a jury, and that is your function here. You are here to decide the truth of the facts. Now, of course, you don't know anything about it yourselves. You did not see it. You do not know what the conditions of this roadway were. I didn't see it. None of these lawyers saw it. So you cannot decide it upon what you know yourselves, nor upon what we tell you. The best material that we can give you with which to decide it is the sworn testimony of witnesses who come in here and swear in the presence of God to tell you the truth. Now, of course, you were up here in front where you could see these witnesses as they testified, watch their faces, and where you could see the light and the shadows go over their faces as they testified, where you could see how they acted as they spoke and how they reacted to what was being asked of them or what was being said, where you could look right into their faces and judge them and determine how much credit you should give to what they said. In view of the fact that you had this favorable position up here, where you could see and hear everything that was said and done alone, there would be no sense in asking you to take what I say you testified to, or what these lawyers say was testified to. You heard it yourselves, so you must depend upon your own recollection of what you heard and saw, said and done here. Don't be bound by what I say they testified to, nor what these lawyers say they testified to. You heard them testify, and you have got to take all that testimony and examine it to the best of your ability. You have got to try to make a picture, a sort of a movie in your own mind of the truth in this case. You have got to make a moving picture of what went on here that night as this chauffeur drove this taxi cab along this road, and try to get the true facts in that picture. Well, on the one hand, it is claimed that there was a bad condition in the road for some distance east and west of this trestle, and particularly under the trestle that there was a big hole, and the plaintiffs claimed that they went into that hole and got a bump that caused all of these injuries. On the other hand, the claim is that the road was not in any such condition at all, that the road was in fairly reasonably good condition. A macadam road in a park like this does not have to be as smooth as a ballroom floor. It does not have to be as smooth as a sidewalk. The automobile traffic that goes over it is on rubber tires designed specifically and specially to absorb the shocks of ridges and bumps and holes in a highway. The city is not obliged to have a highway like glass that you can go roller skating on. Now, you heard me outline to a certain extent, and you also heard the testimony of the plaintiff's witnesses as to the condition of this highway. On the other hand, they bring in the foreman of the golf grounds or roadways in the park, and they bring in 2 police officers, and they all say that this roadway was a good roadway, that it did not have any serious holes or ruts or bumps in it at all, that it was up in to the standard that can be asked of the city in its maintenance of roadways. Now, you also heard the testimony of these plaintiffs, just of the plaintiffs themselves, because the other witnesses were not in the taxi. They testified that this taxi came along there and got to a rough section of the road or on some distance before it reached the trestle or the tunnel at all, and that they were being shaken up and shook around for 200 or 300 feet before they ever got into the big hole under the trestle.